Hundreds came to show their respects, a much-needed morale boost for his battered family. His mother, the most grievously impacted, they say.
The Gulf states were thrust into this war, which we had nothing to do with. My message is stop the war as soon as possible.
So long after the drones and the missiles stop coming and the sirens here fall silent, there'll be some very sad families with an empty seat at the dinner table. But they'll know that when their nation called them to action, they paid the ultimate price.
All right, our Nick Robertson in Kuwait, thank you so much for that.
U.S. President now speaking to reporters at Joint Base Andrews. Let's listen in.
I think your gas prices, as soon as that's over, are going to come tumbling down along with everything else. I think it's going to be, you're going to see a very big decrease in the price of gasoline, gas, anything having to do with energy as soon as this is ended. But we had to end the nuclear threat in the Middle East and throughout the world, and we will have done that.
Mr. President.
Still expect unconditional surrender, and what does that mean?
Well, to me, it means very simply that we are in a position of dominance that nobody's ever seen before. And whether or not they're able to say the words or whether or not they're able to even fight, their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, most of their military is gone, their big threat is gone in every way. They have no radar, they have no anti-aircraft weapons, for the most part weapons, and for indefinitely they have no way of determining what they call visibility. So just about everything is gone, and you'll see that. But today we've had some very, very big hits, very powerful hits.
Mr. President, when will the Navy start escorting tankers to the Strait?
It'll happen soon.
Mr. President.
I have, and we're discussing a couple of different things with them. Not only that, but others.
Mr. President, on the SAVE Act, if Leader Thune cannot whip up the Republican support to either nuke the filibuster, reopen the government and pass the SAVE Act, or somehow...
It's not called the SAVE Act, it's called the
Save America Act. You're right, sir. Do you think, if Leader Thune can't accomplish that, do you think the Senate needs a new leader?
Well, it's certainly a very popular thing. I don't think there's ever been a bill that's more popular than the Save America Act. It's voter ID, it's proof of citizenship, it's things that are so popular. No men and women's sports, no transgender mutilization of our children, so many different things. It's so good. No running around with the mail-in ballot nonsense that's gone on for so long that no other country does. No other country. We're going to clean up our elections. I don't think I've ever been involved in anything that's had the support of the Save America Act. So we'll see what happens.
How regularly are you speaking with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and are your objectives the same in terms of ending the war?
Well, I think they might be a little different, I guess. You know, they're a different country than we are. But he will tell you there's never been a power like the power of the United States. I built our military in my first term, continue to do so, but I built our military and rebuilt it. It was in bad shape, just like the wall, just like the border, just like everything else in our country. It was all in bad shape, but I rebuilt the military in my first term, and we're using it in this term to, really for the sake of good, for the sake of peace, and for the sake of safety and good.
Do you speak daily? Do you speak with Netanyahu?
I speak to him a lot.
How long now do you think the war is likely to last?
I can't tell you that. I mean, I have my own idea, but what good does it do? It'll be as long as it's necessary. They've been decimated. Their country's in bad shape. The whole thing is collapsing. If you read some of the fake news, it's like, oh, they're doing wonderfully. They're not doing wonderfully. They're doing the opposite. They're doing as bad as you can have. I would say this. I won't give you time, but we're way ahead of schedule.
And can you comment on...
Militarily, we're way ahead of schedule. I can't talk to you.
Sir, you made a post about Claudia Sheinbaum refusing your help in Mexico. What's your plan with Mexico?
Well, she should not have refused my help. I offered to get rid of the cartels in Mexico, and for some reason, she doesn't want to do that. I like her very much, but she should get rid of the cartels, because the cartels are, whether we like it or not, the cartels are running Mexico. We can't have that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You've just been listening there to President Trump as he departs Maryland for the weekend, heading down to Mar-a-Lago in Florida. He was asked quite a few questions there about the war in Iran and, of course, about oil prices. He said oil prices will start tumbling down as soon as the war is over. But he couldn't give any indication about when that would be. He said the war will continue as long as necessary. He added that he believes they are ahead of schedule. And he said the U.S. is in a position of dominance. He claimed that in his first term in office as U.S. president, he rebuilt the military, and this term he is using it for peace. He couldn't give any indication on when there'll be military escorts for tanks in the Strait of Hormuz, although he did say it will happen soon. We are going to continue to follow this story closely. War is mounting. It's now over 2,000 people killed, according to CNN estimates, as the conflict approaches a third week. Most of those deaths are in Iran and Lebanon. But more families here in the United States are now grieving. The U.S. military tanker that had to make an emergency landing in Israel, but another refueling plane went down in Iraq, killing all 6 Americans on board. We've now learned that the U.S. is sending a rapid response Marine unit to the Middle East as a defiant Iran launched more attacks on its Gulf neighbors and Israel. This new video is showing missile debris in the skies falling over Tel Aviv. And I want to go now to Tel Aviv, where our Jeremy Diamond joins us now live. Jeremy, we appreciate you being there for us. So the U.S. and Israeli bombardment of Iran continues. And as I've just been mentioning, Iran is firing back with missiles and drones. Israel now confirming at least 12 people have been killed. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, that's exactly right. This war is continuing, and it is certainly intensifying at this hour. We've been watching the strikes that Israel and the United States have been conducting in Iran, as well as the strikes that Israel is carrying out in Lebanon. Across both of those conflict zones so far, more than 2,000 people at a minimum have been killed, according to the health ministries of both Iran and Lebanon. In Lebanon, we know that of the 700 plus people who've been killed, at least 100 have been children, and Israel is intensifying its strikes there. We're witnessing not only the impact that the strikes are having, but also these evacuation orders that Israel has now issued for about 14% of Lebanese territory, resulting in over 800,000 people who've been displaced so far. And now the Israeli government still actively considering and preparing for the possibility of a ground operation in southern Lebanon. In Iran, we've witnessed these strikes that Israel carried out in the capital city of Tehran amid this pro-regime rally that was taking place there, where several senior Iranian officials attended in what was quite a stunning show of defiance, given the fact that Israeli officials have in the past and are continuing to target senior Iranian regime officials. Meanwhile, Iran has been directing its ballistic missile fire here in Israel. Tonight, we saw several impacts as a result of what appears to be Iran's continued use of cluster munitions. Using cluster munitions over residential areas is a violation of international law, and that is exactly what Iran appears to be doing. We've seen several of these munitions. Basically, they explode in the sky, dropping, 24 smaller bombs indiscriminately over central Israel. We saw several fires break out on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. No one was seriously injured as a result of this, but we have seen 2 people who were killed last week as a result of one of those cluster munitions. Yesterday, there was also a direct impact of one of these Iranian missiles. Several people were lightly injured, but no serious injuries there as well. And Hezbollah has also intensified its rocket fire on northern and central Israel. So as we're seeing, this conflict is showing no signs of slowing down, and there doesn't yet appear to be any signs of any kind of diplomatic off-ramp in the making.
And just quickly, Jeremy, the bodies of American service members will be heading home soon. Another 6 people killed. The defense secretary simply said bad things can happen. What is the U.S. military saying about what happened there?
Well, the U.S. military is insisting that this was not the result of any enemy fire nor any friendly fire. They are pointing to a tragic incident that took place in the skies over western Iraq. 6 U.S. service members died as a result of this incident, and the U.S. military now says it is investigating. We should note that the Islamic resistance in Iraq, an Iranian proxy, has claimed responsibility for downing this U.S. refueling plane, but there's no evidence to substantiate that. Instead, what we've seen is an image of another plane that the U.S. military says was involved in this incident, a second refueling plane that landed safely at Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport. And in the images of that, you can see that the tail of that plane has been kind of sliced off in what points to potentially some kind of a mid-air collision. But again, the U.S. military investigating this incident, and hopefully we'll learn more soon about exactly what caused such a tragic incident.
Tonight, as the U.S. military takes on Iran, Pete Hegseth is taking on the media. At a press briefing, the defense secretary took issue with coverage of the war while contradicting his own message in a span of just a few minutes. Here's the first example.
For example, a banner or a headline, Mideast war intensifies, splashing on the screen the last couple of days, alongside visuals of civilian or energy targets that Iran has hit, because that's what they do. What should the banner read instead? How about Iran increasingly desperate? Today will be, yet again, the highest volume of strikes that America has put over the skies of Iran and Tehran. The number of sorties and number of bomber pulses, the highest yet, ramping up and only up. And quantity has a quality of its own as we continue to ramp up.
Next, Hegseth took issue with how the scope of the war is being presented.
Another example of a fake headline that I saw yesterday, war widening. Here's a real headline for you for an actual patriotic press. How about Iran shrinking, going underground? The only thing that is widening is our advantage.
But the war is widening. More than 24 countries have become involved, either directly or indirectly. Some hit by strikes, some sending equipment and personnel, and others, like Russia, are reportedly giving Iran intelligence. And then there is the situation in the Strait of Hormuz. At least 14 ships have been attacked in the Strait or in the Persian Gulf since the start of this war. And as we mentioned in the last block, the president is announcing that Navy ships will soon enter the waterway. But according to Pete Hegseth, there's nothing to be concerned about.
And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with, we have been dealing with it, and don't need to worry about it. The only thing prohibiting transit in the Straits right now is Iran shooting at shipping. It is open for transit should Iran not do that. The Strait of Hormuz is something we've paid attention to from the beginning, and the American people can rest assured we will ensure that our interests are advanced, no doubt.
Tonight, what exactly is the timeline for when this war with Iran will be over? So far, we've heard weeks, not months. We've heard soon. We've even heard that it's already over. But now Trump has a new answer for that question.
When it's over, and I don't think it's going to be long, when it's over, this is going to bounce right back so fast.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
Well, we're closing in on now the third week of the war with Iran. And tonight, President Trump says the United States has bombed what he calls Iran's crown jewel, a vital Iranian oil hub in the Persian Gulf. Now, this move significantly raises the stakes in this conflict. What you might be wondering about is the timing. Specifically, why does he need to hit it now? Because if you've been listening to Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Iran's military has already been devastated and almost completely destroyed.
Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, most of their military is gone, their big threat is gone in every way.
Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no Air Force. Iran has no Navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky.
Strikes from Iran, they are down from the opening days of the war. Hegseth says Iranian missile volume is also down 90%. Drones, down 95%. But Iran is still proving it can threaten the entire global economy. Exhibit A seems to be the Strait of Hormuz, that vital choke point for 20% of the world's oil. Tankers that try to pass through, they're being hit, turned into fireballs. Something Hegseth acknowledges.
They are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with. We have been dealing with it and don't need to worry about it.
No need to worry about, he says. Well, the president put it this way earlier this week. These ships should go through the Strait of Hormuz and show some guts. There's nothing to be afraid of. Well, try telling that to the crews of those ships, the ones who've seen the videos of other tankers erupting into flames. Hegseth said today the United States would not let Iran contest Hormuz. And tonight, it looks like we're seeing part of Trump's plan to keep those ships sailing. Because he says the United States has obliterated every military target. Here, Kharg Island on your screen. That's a small Iranian port in the Persian Gulf. It handles about 90% of Iran's oil exports. But if the strikes on its military sites are the stick, well, Trump also left Iran a choice. He says he deliberately did not wipe out the island's oil infrastructure. But if Iran tries to interfere with shipping through Hormuz, he says he will reconsider. So the big question now is, what's Iran going to do? Just yesterday, a top Iranian official warned the country would abandon all restraint if the United States attacked any of its islands. There's another major question underneath all of this. Did the administration fully grasp how willing Iran would be to cause chaos? Why did this island go untouched until now, nearly 2 weeks into the war? Why didn't the U.S. tap into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve until this Wednesday? And why didn't the military announce the bombing of Iranian mine-laying ships until Tuesday? Multiple sources are telling CNN that the Pentagon significantly underestimated Iran's ability to shut down that strait. Now, Hegseth says the idea that they didn't plan for that scenario is patently ridiculous. But the timeline raises some questions. And frankly, there may still be more to come.
Mr. President, when will the Navy start escorting tankers through the Straits of Hormuz?
It'll happen soon.
And good evening, I'm Erica Hill, in for Aaron Burnett. Out front tonight, the breaking news. More U.S. Marines now headed to the Middle East. According to sources, the Pentagon is sending as many as 2,500 additional Marines and sailors, plus warships, to the region. Now, these units typically have a ground and aviation combat component. The decision to bolster U.S. forces in the region comes just as President Trump was speaking with reporters, saying they've decimated Iran's military. And then in a new post just minutes ago, the president saying the U.S. military, quote, totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Kharg Island. It's clear, though, this war is not over, and America's involvement is getting deeper. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said today will actually be the heaviest day of kinetic fires across Iran. And Israel, for its part, not letting up either, going after what it calls terror targets in Tehran. You're looking at new video showing blasts. Iran, though, is defiant tonight. Cluster munitions exploding in several locations in Tel Aviv, according to Israeli officials. This video shows you the moment of impact from one of the missiles. The explosions causing this fire, a number of buildings and vehicles destroyed. The war, which is now entering its third week, is also putting more American troops in harm's way. An Iran-backed group in Iraq is now offering more than $100,000 for information on American targets. And at the same time, the U.S. government is offering up to $10 million for information on the top 10 Iranian leaders, which includes the new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. Kristen Holmes is at the White House. Jeremy Diamond is in Tel Aviv. Kristen, let's begin with you there at the White House. The president just speaking. What did he say?
Well, before we get to what he said, I do want to go to this breaking news because moments after he spoke, he talked about Kharg Island. And this is really a big deal. I mean, 90% of Iran's oil exports go through Kharg Island. There had been questions as to why the United States or Israel had not bombed Kharg Island, particularly given its economic strength for Iran. It is a place, it is kind of a sensitive area, and it's clearly something that the U.S. could have targeted. President Trump had been asked questions about this. He kind of evaded the answer earlier today. Now, here's what he said. Because there is so much oil infrastructure in this area, he specifically says, I have chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. There is a reason why this is so important. Earlier today, I was talking to White House officials. They said there was going to be actions as early as this weekend, as early as this evening, that were going to show how the U.S. was working towards trying to get these ships through the Strait of Hormuz, getting the Strait of Hormuz opened again. That is clearly what they were referring to, was these explosions in Karg Island, a place that had seemed like it was going to be off limits. Clearly here he is saying open up the Strait of Hormuz or else you're going to see more bombs dropping and more strikes in the area. Now, we did also hear from President Trump just seconds before he sent that Truth Social post saying that those Navy escorts were going to start happening soon. I was told by White House officials they were going to have to clear that area. They have to make sure it was safe for the military, that they were going to have to get the resources there. But he did say the word soon. And one of the more interesting things we heard him say is that he has officially taken any sort of timeline off the table. He was asked specifically about his 4 to 5 weeks comments, and he said that he couldn't give a timeline anymore. So I know that we had been reporting that the administration had been saying this, but this is, Donald Trump here officially saying that 4 to 5 week timeline is off the table, and instead replacing it with a big question mark.
Yeah, very important. A number of very important developments there. Kristen, really appreciate it. Jeremy Diamond is out front live in Tel Aviv. Jeremy, what more are you seeing there? We were just talking about, these additional cluster munitions.
Yeah, that's right. Iran has fired multiple rounds of ballistic missiles towards Israel today, including this evening. We saw multiple impacts in the Tel Aviv area in what appeared to be Iran's latest use of these cluster munitions. These are munitions that release some 24 smaller bombs dispersed over several miles of territory, often hitting residential areas. And that's what we saw tonight. A couple of fires broke out on the outskirts of Tel Aviv. There were no casualties, however, as a result of this fire. Yesterday, also, a ballistic missile made a direct impact in northern Israel, but also no fatalities. Dozens of people, however, were lightly wounded. And this is coming as we're continuing to see Israel and the United States striking Iran very, very hard. As you mentioned, the United States saying that this was, one of the most severe days of U.S. airstrikes in Iran, and Israel is also ramping up its strikes. Those stunning images that we saw today of this pro-regime rally in Tehran, an Israeli airstrike in the distance, even as senior Iranian officials were attending this rally. Quite a remarkable show of defiance when you think about it from those senior Iranian officials, considering the fact that they are being targeted by Israeli intelligence and by its military. And this also kind of goes to show, the kind of asymmetric warfare that we're starting to see between Iran and, on the other side, the United States and Israel. Because while the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth today talked about Iran having no air defenses, no air force, no navy, we are still seeing that Iran has the ability to still disrupt life here in Israel with those daily ballistic missile fire attacks, and also being able to do things like blocking the Strait of Hormuz, which has gone on now for multiple days. And the United States still doesn't seem to have a plan yet, or at least a timeline for being able to get U.S. Navy ships to start escorting those tankers through that strait. Global markets clearly rattled and disrupted, and the global economy, most importantly, disrupted by all of this.
Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. Now, this is a crucial piece of land in the Persian Gulf, referred to as Iran's oil lifeline. Trump also just admitting the U.S. and Israel could have different objectives when it comes to ending the war with Iran. This as another front of the war shows no signs of slowing down. Israel intensifying its attacks on Lebanon. One apparent strike now being blamed for killing 9 members of a single family, including 5 children. Isabel Young is on the ground in Lebanon, where that airstrike hit.
We can see quite a lot of damage here, the cars, this big building up here. We're in southern Lebanon, actually just outside of the area that the Israeli Defense Forces announced that individuals should evacuate from yesterday. But you can see this building here was struck pretty hard. We're told that it was a yogurt factory by the neighbors here. You can see these kind of vats that they say were used to make yogurt. And what we know is that 9 people were killed in this strike, including 5 children. I mean, what the Israeli Defense Forces are saying is that they are targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, and we don't know in this case if that was the situation. But what we can see is that, I mean, the destruction from here is pretty large, and we're told that the children were playing just on the outskirts of the property here, in this factory and home with their grandparents, and that they were killed. The burials are happening today. It's really heartbreaking. You can see family members behind me who are just walking around trying to look for remnants of their family's belongings. The children's bodies were told are in pieces, and are going to take a while to identify the DNA so that they can actually do a burial. You can see up here, there's school books, a children's rucksack. We're told by the IDF that they are targeting Hezbollah infrastructure, and obviously we don't know in this scenario if that's the case, but we do know that this area that was struck was...
Continues. Our weapons are the most powerful and sophisticated that the world has ever known, but for reasons of decency, I've chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. The president then adds, however, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. Now, Karg Island is where most of Iran's oil exports flow. It has gone untouched until now. And when asked earlier today about taking it, the president took umbrage.
I can't answer a question like that. You shouldn't ask it. You shouldn't be even asking it. It's one of so many different things. It's not high on the list, but it's one of so many different things. And I can change my mind in seconds. But, you know, for you to ask a question, who would answer a question like that? I mean, you're asking me a question, Karg Island, okay, everything. Who would ask a question like that? And what fool would answer it, okay? Let's say I was going to do it, or let's say I wasn't going to do it. What would I tell you? Oh, yes, Brian, I'm thinking about doing it. Let me let you know what time and when it'll take place. It's not, you know, it's sort of a foolish question. A little surprising for you because you're a smart man.
Iran, you'll recall, has threatened to send oil tankers going through the Strait of Hormuz up in flames if the U.S. targets its energy facilities, such as the ones on Karg Island. Now, the president was asked late today whether those ships could expect U.S. protection.
Mr. President, when will the Navy start escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz?
The president did not give specifics on that, nor did he specifically cite what constitutes victory in the war when asked about it earlier today.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
Feels it in his bones. Tonight, Karg Island attack caps day 14 in the war, and what was billed by the Pentagon this morning as the heaviest day of strikes in the fighting so far. This is one of them in Tehran. Strikes in the background as crowds turned out there and across the country to mark a day of solidarity with Palestinians and show their resistance against the U.S. and Israel. Also, we should point out today, we learned that some 2,500 Marines and sailors are headed into the region, and though we don't yet know what this Marine Expeditionary Unit's mission is or may be, they are traditionally used for large-scale evacuations as well as amphibious assaults. The president, as you know, has neither ruled out ground combat, or hasn't ruled it in or out, I should say. We've got Kristen Holmes in Washington, D.C., and Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv. I want to start with senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes. So, Kristen, at this point, what are the other details are there about this bombing on Karg Island?
Well, Anderson, look, they're still coming in right now. President Trump saying that he did not strike any of the oil facilities, which is notable. Karg Island is essentially one of the most sensitive economic targets in Iran. It has gone relatively untouched, and experts have said that part of the reason could be the fact that if President Trump was to bomb any of these oil facilities, about 90% of the crude oil exports go through Karg Island, that could actually surge the already surging oil prices, make them even more expensive. However, President Trump saying that he'd hit several military assets, but not the actual oil facilities, but then tying it directly to the Strait of Hormuz. The reason why this is so critical, I spoke with a White House official earlier today who said that we were going to see some kind of military action linked to the Strait of Hormuz. They are trying to essentially strong-arm Iran right now. They are showing them the military force they have and using this as a threat to lord over Iran because they don't want them going after those ships. They need the passageway of the Strait of Hormuz. And as you noted, they are talking about this idea of the Navy escorting those ships. President Trump saying it could be soon. But that same White House official I spoke to said there was a lot of steps that they would have to go through to get this to happen. They do want it to happen quickly, but they have to completely secure the area. They are clearly now holding this threat of potentially bombing these facilities and going beyond just leaving this area of Karg Island untouched as a bit of leverage over Iran as they are trying to straighten out what is happening to try and take control of the situation and the movement of the oil. But this is a significant escalation. And Anderson, I can't help but note that answer that he gave to Brian Kilmeade, he answers questions like that all the time. I mean, he answers questions about boots on the ground, about strikes. He got so clearly wrapped around that answer, and it seems as though that's because this was the next target. I was told just a few hours after that and a few hours before it was actually announced that there would be some military action. But the idea that, you know, that was a question he wouldn't answer, and the way he answered it just goes to show you he was trying to not answer it. A guy who has been answering almost everything people have put to him, even in phone interviews, for 3 minutes.
Yeah, Kristen Holmes, thanks very much. I want to go now to CNN's Jeremy Diamond, who is in Tel Aviv tonight. Jeremy, what have you been seeing there? What more can you tell us about Karg Island and also the significance it is to the U.S.?
Well, it is a hugely significant island, and there's a reason why now, with these initial U.S. military strikes, still avoiding hitting the oil infrastructure at this island. I am learning a little bit more about what exactly the United States did strike on Karg Island. This is from a U.S. military official I spoke with just a few minutes ago. They said that this was a series of wide-scale strikes on this island, but strikes that used precision munitions to avoid hitting the oil infrastructure there. Instead, I'm told that the targets included a naval mine storage facilities, missile storage bunkers, and other military infrastructure on the island. But there's no question that President Trump's military action on Karg Island tonight is intended to send a message to the Iranian regime, a very clear threat here that the United States is willing to strike that oil infrastructure should Iran not change its posture as it relates to the Strait of Hormuz. But I think we really need to consider what the impact of that actually would be, because should the United States strike the oil infrastructure on Karg Island, you're going to see a series of short and long-term ramifications for that. Experts have predicted that it could send oil prices, which are already at over $100 a barrel, up to $150 a barrel, because of the fact that not only does Karg Island process 90% of Iran's oil exports, but Iran's global oil supply amounts to about 4% of the global oil markets. And in addition to that, Iran could escalate even further by striking oil infrastructure targets on the other side of the Gulf in countries that are allied with the United States. We've already seen them carry out a very limited series of strikes on oil infrastructure in some of those countries, like in Bahrain and Kuwait, and so obviously they could escalate even further. And then there's the long-term question here, as the United States and Israel are clearly still pursuing this ultimate goal of regime change. What happens to the Iranian economy, even if the regime does change, if you destroy and dismantle something that is really the lifeblood of the Iranian economy? And so all of that has to be considered as President Trump is threatening to go even beyond what he has done tonight, which is strike only the military targets on Karg Island, and now threatening to go after the oil infrastructure as well.
A residential area on fire in central Israel earlier tonight after an Iranian missile strike. Emergency responders say there were no initial reports of injuries in the attack and others in the area. Also tonight, the president is saying U.S. Central Command has carried out one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East, claiming in a social media post that they, quote, totally obliterated every military target in Iran's Karg Island. Meanwhile, since the war started nearly 2 weeks ago, the president or his defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, have deflected concerns over the war, including after sources just told CNN that Russia is helping Iran with advanced drone tactics.
You said it is a little excursion, and you said it is a war. So which one is it?
Well, it's both. It's both. It's an excursion that will keep us out of a war.
Are you supposed about a domestic terrorist attack about Iran, sir?
No. As the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with, we have been dealing with it, and don't need to worry about it.
Don't need to worry about it, Secretary Hegseth said today. Joining me now is CNN political commentator and Air Force veteran Adam Kinzinger, who served in both the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and CNN chief political analyst David Axelrod, who was a senior advisor to President Obama. Congressman, first of all, do you think we need to worry about it?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Hegseth just seems like a guy playing the Secretary of Defense on a really bad movie. Like, he's over the top. Nothing worries him ever. He did the old, we don't have to worry about it, the other guy has to worry about it.
With airstrikes by the U.S. on Iran's Karg Island, the war now takes a new and uncharted direction. More on that and where this conflict could land. Joining us is New Hampshire Democratic Congresswoman Maggie Goodlander. She is joining us. She's a Naval Reserve veteran. Congresswoman, appreciate you being with us. I'm wondering what your reaction is to the president's post about bombing Karg Island and what we heard from Secretary of Defense Hegseth today.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Anderson. Look, to step back here for a sec, you know, I'm here in New Hampshire, and it is crystal clear to me what the #1 concern of my constituents, of people across this country is. It's the affordability crisis. It's the sky-high cost of living. 2 weeks ago, the president launched unilaterally this war that has been uncharted and unclear in its most basic objectives from day one. What has been clear and continues to be clear are the extraordinary costs and the costs that are being borne by the American people. We've seen already 13 service members given their lives in this war. The president still can't give a clear explanation of our objectives. We're seeing gas prices surging, food prices on the cusp of surging. We're hearing from farmers who are feeling the pain of the real costs of war. And Anderson, the president seems hell-bent on escalating, and I think this is what we're seeing once again tonight, without any clear objectives.
The administration is pushing back on CNN reporting that they underestimated Iran's willingness to close the Strait of Hormuz. I know you said you essentially don't see a plan here from the Pentagon or the White House. I mean, do you support the objective of essentially trying to neutralize Iran? If that is, I mean, several objectives have been stated, but that's one.
You're right. I mean, it's been a constant shifting set of objectives. The president seems to change his mind about what this war is about every day, multiple times a day. 2 weeks ago, he said this was about regime change. Well, what we've seen is one old supreme leader, radical, replaced with a much younger supreme leader. He's also said this is about Iran's nuclear program. And Anderson, you know, we've had longstanding bipartisan support for the basic objective of preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. But so far, the president has nothing to show for advancing that basic objective. He's talked about degrading Iran's military capabilities, Iran's navy. If that's what this is about, Anderson, it's really hard to follow the plot. And this is a huge problem because we've seen this movie before. We know from history what it looks like when you've got a president at the helm who's hell-bent on escalating without any clear objectives or endgame, a president who can't answer the most basic question of how this ends and how this is going to be good for the American people. We've seen this movie before, and the way it ends is in thousands of American lives lost and trillions of American taxpayers dollars spent. And right now, the people I represent can't afford this. We're in the middle of an affordability crisis that the president calls a hoax and a con job. Anderson, but the fact is, I came to Congress to lower costs, and in every relevant sense, from home heating prices to the gas pump to the grocery store, the American people are paying the price of this war.
Congresswoman, appreciate your time. Maggie, good.
As President Trump says tonight that the United States military, at his direction, has executed what he describes as one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East and totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. Now, Karg Island, for those who don't know, isn't just another target. It's actually the beating heart of Iran's economy, the terminal where 90% of the country's crude oil reaches the world. Strike there, and you're not just hitting Iran, you could potentially be triggering an earthquake in the global energy market. That means the potential of higher gas prices for a longer period of time, but the president says that he believes this will just be a temporary blip.
When it's over, and I don't think it's going to be long, when it's over, this is going to bounce right back so fast.
When are you going to know when it's over?
When I feel it.
Okay.
I feel it in my bones.
The president said the war will end when he feels it in his bones. And despite assurances that he's made publicly that it's almost over, there are signs tonight that point to a U.S. mission that is only expanding. We've now learned that the military is actually deploying thousands of more service members to the Middle East. That includes at least 2,500 Marines and sailors. And that comes tonight as, on a somber note, the death toll has continued to rise. We now know 13 U.S. service members have died over the first 2 weeks of this war. That includes the 6 Americans who were killed in the crash of that U.S. refueling tanker in Iraq. Of course, our thoughts are with their families tonight. And in terms of where this war stands and where we're going, Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and thank you so much for being here. There's so much to talk about tonight with all the developments in Iran. I think first, though, on the 13 service members that have now been killed during Operation Epic Fury, I wonder what goes through your mind when you think of those lives that have been lost already.
Oh, it's absolutely heartbreaking, Caitlin. I'm a strong supporter of our military and the great men and women who serve. I think they're some of the greatest among us, and their families who are so concerned about them right now. These are 13 lives that I believe should not have been lost. This war is not something that Americans voted for in 2024. As a matter of fact, we voted for the opposite. We voted for no more foreign wars, no more regime change. And we were told by many members in the administration throughout the campaign, J.D. Vance, Tulsi Gabbard, and others, that they believed that going to war with Iran would be a terrible idea. It was something that Charlie Kirk himself had said over and over again. And Donald Trump, President Trump, I voted for him 3 times, fought for him to become president, and I still want him to be successful. But he told Americans for over 10 years and even longer that he thought foreign wars and regime change was really a bad direction for America to go in. And we trusted and believed him that we wouldn't be doing this. But, this was an unprovoked war, and Israel pulled us into it, pulled America into it. And so those are 13 lives that should not have been lost.
Yeah, and of course, when the president was asked about that, he argued that maybe he forced Israel's hand in this matter. But I mean, now here we are 13 days in. He's planning on sending more troops to the region, we're told. It's not clear exactly what they'll do while they're there, a Marine group. Is that something you support?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I like many millions and millions of Americans are outraged by this. He never came to America and addressed the nation and gave clear reasons why we would go to war with Iran, especially after he told us back in the summer that he had completely obliterated all of their nuclear capabilities and had even chastised any news organization or media that said otherwise. But here we are in a war with Iran, and it doesn't make any sense. And I'll go further with this. Why are we sending thousands of more U.S. military troops? Why are we sending more of our military resources? Why are we pulling military resources away from other sectors of the world where it's much needed and putting it all there to fight Iran and to have this war in the Middle East? And the reality is there are so many innocent people dying. I mean, the little girl's school is such an outrage. It's horrific. And Americans, we don't want to think of our military as being responsible of killing little children. This is absolutely something that Americans should not tolerate. And we are owed answers. They keep saying that they're investigating, but it is such a serious situation. You know, I drove by an elementary school today, and there were children out on the playground swinging on the swings and playing on the playground. And I thought to myself, I'm so thankful that our children are safe, but I can't imagine living somewhere where school children or people's children have been bombed or killed. And this is something that has so many people outraged, because I'll go back, Caitlin, we did not vote for this. We voted for an end to foreign wars, and that's exactly what we should be seeing.
On the school, so you don't think that their answers so far have been sufficient on who's responsible for that, given the evidence that points to the United States?
You know, I don't want to ever think about our military doing something like that or making that type of mistake or however it happened. But everyone has seen the video. Everyone has seen the still shot of the Tomahawk missile. So no, I think they need to come out and talk about it. There's so many things that are so concerning about this war, and Americans have not been given enough answers. Here we are. Here's Americans at home right now. We've got families getting ready to go on spring break, and gas prices are skyrocketing. Inflation has barely stabilized, and people voted for lower grocery costs. Well, we're going to see costs at the grocery stores going up because diesel is going up and oil is going up because of this war. We've got 30% of the world's fertilizer goes through the Strait. That affects our farmers that are struggling already. We voted to put Americans first. I'm a conservative. I'm the America First wing of the Republican Party. That's how I voted. That's what I fight for. That's what I want to see happen. I want to see Americans put first. And we've got the Republicans in Congress right now. They can't even fund Homeland Security. Our own Border Patrol, ICE, TSA agents, and others are not even getting paid. But yet here they are told that they're going to be voting, and they'll vote for it. Believe me, they love the war. The neocons love the war. They're going to pass a supplemental to fund the war in Iran. What is that going to be? $50 billion or more, while the war is costing us approximately $1 to $2 billion a day. But yet we're not even funding Homeland Security, and Americans are still struggling. And Caitlin, I got to tell you, I'm still waiting on Mike Johnson to roll out that Republican health care plan that he boasted and bragged that he was going to have, because Americans can't even afford health insurance right now.
Yeah, I think you said that this is not what the president's supporters voted for. I mean, you're someone who campaigned for him endlessly on the campaign trail. You know what those voters wanted. And when you talk about just gas prices, they're up 74 cents almost per gallon in Georgia in the last month. The administration said today they have a plan when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, which is, basically choked off at this point, which is why those gas prices are so high. We're 13 days in. Do you think that they have a plan?
I don't know if they have a plan or not, because they've never made a clear case to the American people why they are bombing Iran. They've never made a clear case why they're supporting Israel while Israel is bombing Lebanon, and while Israel totally grazed Gaza, killing thousands and thousands of people and children. No, I don't think they've made a clear case for this at all. And the reality is, this is something that Americans are so fed up with, and we voted to end it. That's what we voted for, to end all of this. Here we are over a year into President Trump's administration, and we're in a full-scale war with Iran that doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. So no, none of it makes sense.
You're someone who once said you thought that there was no one more deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize than President Trump. Obviously, he's long sought one. Do you think that there's any way he could still get one given this war?
You know, at one time when he wanted to be the president of peace and he wanted to end wars and constantly talked about no more foreign wars, no ending wars, of course I thought he deserved the Nobel Peace Prize. But do I think he deserves it now? No, absolutely not. And I don't think this is what the American people want. Look, I think there's a big divide, Caitlin, between the baby boomer generation and like Gen X, my generation, and the millennials. You know, our generations have been the ones that have been sent to fight these wars in the Middle East, and our generations have paid a huge cost, and we want to see it over with. But yet it's the baby boomers that are in power that are just clinging to power, living out the end of their days. You know, it really angers me, Caitlin, because I feel like they're ruining it for the rest of us. They're leaving us with tens of trillions of national debt. Only 7 years from now, Social Security is going to be bankrupt. So me and you, so our Social Security payments are going to be basically a tax, and we may never see a Social Security check. So the direction of America and the divide between the generations, where many baby boomers are supporting this war because that's what they've been told on television, where many of us, we get our news from alternate sources and international news, and we know what's going on. You know, here's the message for the rest of the world. The younger generations of Americans, we don't want war with the world. We want peace. We desperately want peace between all of our nations. We want good trade. We want to have good business deals. And we want to be able to visit your countries and you come visit ours. This is not what we want. This is not what we voted for. Yeah. And I'm certainly praying for our military troops, and I'm praying for the administration to stop the insanity.
You know, one of the complaints that we heard from Trump world in his first term when I was covering him was that he had the right instincts, but he was surrounded by people who led him down the wrong path or led him astray or didn't let him lead into his instincts. You just mentioned J.D. Vance, his vice president, and Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. I still don't even think we've heard from Tulsi Gabbard since this war started. We've heard some comments from J.D. Vance. I wonder what you think of that, given they are obviously key voices in his inner circle this time.
You know, I can understand they're in a difficult position. They serve at the pleasure of President Trump, and so what I would imagine that's a difficult spot to speak out, but they need to speak out. This is going in a direction where we're looking at possible boots on the ground. Many parents are fearful there may be a draft. We are not told like any end goal or how long this may last.
All right, right now, increasing attacks between Iran and Israel as the growing conflict in the Middle East enters its third week. Israel launching what it calls a massive wave of strikes today, including a reported attack in a central Iranian town described by one resident as a powerful bomb. Video posted to social media and confirmed by CNN shows multiple plumes of smoke rising over the city in Isfahan. The cause unclear, and this was the scene in Tel Aviv, Iran firing off missiles, lighting up the early morning sky before being intercepted. And questions remain about the new leader of Iran. A top official in Iran insists Ayatollah Muqtada Khamenei is in, quote, good health. But President Trump's UN ambassador telling CNN today it's unclear if the new leader is, quote, even alive, end quote. I want to bring in CNN's Jeremy Diamond now in Tel Aviv. Jeremy, what more can you tell us about the latest wave of attacks?
Well, we have certainly been witnessing that this war is not slowing down. Israel has conducted another wave of airstrikes in Iran, more than 400 waves of strikes since the beginning of this conflict. The latest attacks by Israel in Iran focused on headquarters belonging to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, as well as its Basij forces. Those are this paramilitary group that does kind of internal security in Iran. And the military says that it is expanding the scope of its strikes there to degrade the regime's command and command control capabilities. Iran, for its part, fired several waves of ballistic missiles at Israel today. We saw several impacts as a result of what was either falling shrapnel or perhaps those small bombs as part of the cluster munitions that Iran has been firing outfitted to the tops of these ballistic missiles. No serious injuries or fatalities have been reported in Israel today, however. But the Israeli military is making clear that it is willing to keep up this war, keep up these attacks on Iran for at least 3 more weeks, according to the Israeli military spokesman. He told CNN that thousands of targets still remain in Iran for the Israeli military to strike, and that the Israeli military is not working according to a, quote, stopwatch. In addition to that, we're still waiting for a more concrete plan from the United States on how to reopen this Strait of Hormuz, which Iran has effectively blockaded now over the course of this war. We know that the Energy Secretary Chris Wright today said that this conflict will end, in his view, in a matter of weeks, if not sooner. And in the meantime, that the U.S. is working with other countries to try and reopen that strait. But we still haven't heard from any other countries that they're willing to send their navy to the Strait of Hormuz alongside the United States to ensure safe passage of those cargo vessels and those commercial oil tankers. Iran, for its part, says that it is open to holding talks with other countries that are seeking to sail through that Strait of Hormuz. Iran's foreign minister said that Iran had already been approached by several countries to that end, but no further details from him either on that front. Fred.
All right. Jeremy Diamond in Tel Aviv, thanks so much. All right, President Trump is also urging key U.S. allies to send ships to help reopen the critical Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. ambassador to the United Nations told CNN this morning that keeping the strait open is also in their interest.
The entire world is affected. Iran can't hold your economies hostage, and we certainly welcome, encourage, and even demand their participation to help their own economies.
With us now is retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Peter Swack. He is also defense attaché to Moscow under President Obama's administration. After the president's request, General, China, Japan, South Korea, the UK are giving the U.S. a kind of wait-and-see response to helping with the Strait of Hormuz. Can the U.S. do it without a coalition?
I think that it's one of those things that damned if you do, damned if you don't. And we've got to be able to transit the Hormuz. That's fundamental to everything that we're doing there, not just for us, but for our allies and friends, whether they're part of the group that will, clear the blockade. No, I think that we're in a little bit of a difficult pickle because it has to be done. Absolutely has to be done. I think that the other countries will fall into line if we go. But you go into the Hormuz and beyond, you are now under a lot of Iranian fires, and we risk losing not just cargo ships, but warships.
Yeah, I mean, you said it has to be done. That is the big quandary, though. How does it get done? Because this morning, Iran's foreign minister said that they are talking to some countries about getting through Hormuz, but it won't be the U.S. or even countries helping the U.S. in its attack on Iran. So when President Trump talks about U.S. Navy ship escorts, do you see that as viable and possible?
I see it as possible, but it is very likely that we will have ships hit because you're going right into the hornet's nest. You've got Iranian forces on the banks of Hormuz. You've got 21 miles width, but they can range out deep, and we can have our aircraft over and everything else, but in the end the ships have to go through, and a very, very serious risk that some will be hit.
Then do you see it as worth it?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think that I think everybody will have a different answer for that. We are now at a position where we have put ourselves, as I said, into a hornet's nest. Not doing it lets up on Iran. It also puts, again, major pressure on the global economy, let alone our own economy and the regional economy. So I think we are now in a position where you work hard behind the scenes doing diplomacy, but you've got to be able to get assets through, but at considerable risk, and that's the problem. I believe this has probably been war gamed at CENTCOM for years. Saying that, it's still hard when you've got to do it.
Okay, well, that's going to be a tough thing for a lot of family members of military personnel to swallow and to hear. And obviously, I mean, it is a very tough job, but these are some very frightening decisions that have to be made involving a lot of people. Brigadier General Peter Swack, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good seeing you again.
You as well. The Pentagon has identified the 6 U.S. airmen, air people, killed when a refueling aircraft crashed in western Iraq on Thursday. Their names are Major John Klinner, Captain Ariana Savino, Tech Sergeant Ashley Pruitt, Captain Seth Koval, Captain Curtis Angst, and Tech Sergeant Tyler Simmons. The crew members are being remembered as outstanding airmen. Major John Klinner was a husband and father who leaves behind a 2-year-old and 7-month-old twins. An Auburn graduate, the university said in a statement, his commitment to serving our nation reflects the courage, character, and sense of duty demonstrated by those who choose a life of service. And friends call Air Force Captain Ariana Savino a great human, a future senior leader, and a mentor to Latina youth. Senator Patty Murray of Washington says, I'm quoting now, women like Savino represent the absolute best of our state and country, end quote. And Air Force Technical Sergeant Ashley Pruitt entered the Air Force in 2017. She oversaw the precise mechanics of mid-air refueling, according to the Air Force. And Air Force Captain Seth Koval's family said the beloved husband and father dreamed of becoming a pilot. His wife remembered him as, quoting now, always putting others before himself until the very end, end quote. Air Force Captain Curtis Angst was responsible for worldwide air refueling, aeromedical, cargo, and passenger operations, according to the Ohio National Guard. He earned a degree in aerospace engineering from the University of Cincinnati. Technical Sergeant Tyler Simmons is being remembered by his mother as a man with a passion for aviation.
He was truly an amazing man. And to do the job as an air refueler is a special person. You have to be kind of smart to do that. And, you know, he was loving. He loved his dog, Grayson. He loved his family. He's loved his friend, Shayna. You know, he's just that guy.
The crew members' deaths bring the number of U.S. troops killed since the war began to now 13. The cause of the crash is still under investigation. All right, with the Strait of Hormuz mostly shut down due to Iranian attacks and oil and gas prices soaring, President Trump is ramping up pressure on other countries to help open the critical shipping route where 20% of the world's oil passes through. In a Truth Social post, the president called on other countries relying on that passageway to be involved in a, quote, team effort to secure traffic through the Strait. CNN's Julia Benbarook is joining us now from West Palm Beach, Florida, near the president's home in Mar-a-Lago, where he's spending the weekend. Julia, I mean, what is the president and the administration saying, or how are they elaborating on how and when other countries might come to help?
Yeah, this is a big area of focus right now because roughly 20% of the world's oil travels through the Strait of Hormuz. And President Donald Trump, he has posted about this a couple of times this weekend already. He said that many countries, particularly those that are impacted by Iran's attempted closure of the Strait, would be sending warships in conjunction with the United States to keep the Strait open. He added that he hopes, emphasis on hopes there, that China, France, South Korea, Japan, and the UK would be among those sending ships. He said in the meantime, the United States would be bombing the shoreline. Now, we did reach out to the White House for clarification on that post, as well as the countries that Trump mentioned specifically. And while China and the UK did respond to our request for comment, they did not confirm that they would be sending ships. Then, according to a senior official in the Japanese government, any decision to send Japanese naval vessels to the Middle East would face a high hurdle. According to reporting from Reuters, and according to its president's office, South Korea said that it would be working closely with the United States, communicating closely on this, and then would carefully consider next steps. In an interview earlier today, Energy Secretary Chris Wright, he commented on this, saying that other countries would be helping, that there would be that team effort that you mentioned, but he didn't go into a lot of detail. Take a listen.
All U.S. military assets, and again, as President Trump mentioned, of other countries will work to open the straits. Right now, our focus is destroying their military capabilities, including those that are used specifically to threaten the straits. But we need to finish those tasks first, and you will see the straits open again in the not too distant future.
And this, of course, comes as Americans are feeling a direct impact here as those prices in gas are surging. And while Trump has said that he is confident that those prices will go down eventually, this could be an attempt to address some of those growing concerns right now. Iran's foreign minister has denied claims that the Strait is completely closed, instead saying that they're blocking vessels with ties to the United States and Israel. Fred.
All right. Julia Benbrook, thanks so much. So as the U.S. war with Iran enters its third week, many polls are showing a majority of Americans skeptical of the U.S. military action in Iran. A recent NPR PBS News Marist poll shows 56% of Americans oppose the military action, with 44% supporting it. A Quinnipiac poll also showed a majority of Americans opposing the Iran war, but it also found a sharp political divide, with 85% of Republicans supporting the military action, but just 7% of Democrats supporting it. Joining us now to talk more about this is Domenico Montanaro. He is an NPR senior political editor and correspondent. Great to see you, Domenico. So, I mean, what's your takeaway from these polls on how Americans are viewing this war?
Well, a lot of things continue to be proxy for President Trump. You know, I mean, I think this 56-44 that you see in our poll opposing to supporting, a lot of that also seems to echo how people view President Trump. You know, I think, though, with his base, obviously 8 in 10 still support this action, you know, and they're going to continue to support this president and have through a lot of different things. Now, I will say the caveat on that is that a lot of people in his base are also really skeptical of long-term, prolonged involvement with high casualties. And if we're to see those things tick up and the United States stay for an extended period of time, I think that's when you might see some of those numbers among Republicans start to decline. But I think that overall, you know, we're in a midterm election year. People are saying that the economy is the most important issue to them. They feel that the president and his administration are not as focused on it as they should be. And it certainly doesn't help that narrative for the president when he's conducting wars overseas.
Mm-hmm. And while you just underscored that the president seems to be holding on to his base, you know, across many of these issues, as it pertains to this one, do people seem to feel like the administration made a good case about the goals of the Iran war, what kind of commitment will continue to carry out, and what the potential end game is?
Well, we certainly heard a lot of conflicting messages from the president. I mean, in almost the same sentence, we heard him at an event in Kentucky, which was supposed to be about the economy, him talking about the Iran war, saying that you don't want to ever say too early that you won, but we won. And then saying that, you know, essentially that it was over because they won, but then saying that he wasn't ready to be done with it yet, and that he would later said, told Fox News' Brian Kilmeade in a radio interview that he would know when it ended when he felt it in his bones. So I don't know that a case has really been made to Americans and to his base in the lead up to this that it was entirely necessary at this point. I mean, I know some of the reporting that you've been doing earlier about whether or not there was an imminent threat. We just haven't heard about an imminent threat. I mean, we've certainly heard that Iran was potentially weeks away from a nuclear weapon, but I feel like we've been hearing that for some 20 years about the threat of an Iranian nuclear weapon. A lot of people, a lot of regional experts have been saying that the United States and Israel saw an opportunity. They had good intelligence on where the Ayatollah was, and they took the opportunity at this moment. So, look, Trump is going to try to find an end game, and he's going to try to find an exit strategy, and certainly wave a victory flag. But he's still sort of angling to figure out what that exit strategy will be.
And those who are in midterm races, what's the posture of what they think or how they think this Iran war might impact the outcome with those races?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, forget the polls. You know, look at the behavior of the candidates themselves. And what we're seeing, and one of the big indicators of, success for one party or the other, is which party is seeing more retirements. And we're seeing a record number of retirements this year for members of Congress, and the majority of those are Republicans. You know, look, most members of Congress and in the Senate, they don't want to work that hard to be reelected. I mean, they have almost 9 in 10 incumbency rate of victory status, and if they have to work hard to raise money, a lot of them are going to think twice about doing that. And if they feel like they're going to be in the minority, they might not want to continue on. And we're seeing that certainly in many cases with a lot of Republicans, a lot of frontline Republicans in those 40 or so swing districts in particular want to maintain this message on the economy and how the president and his administration could bring prices down. And certainly it makes it more difficult when people are saying that tariffs are actually increasing prices, and the president doubles down on that. And then this war with Iran, we see a spike in gas prices, despite what members of the administration say will be, a radical decline in those prices once the war is over. But again, we don't know when that will be, and we don't know if that will be the case, because certainly gas prices in particular go up like a rocket and come down like a feather.
Yeah. All right, today, the death toll continues to climb in Lebanon as Israel continues its military campaign targeting the Iran-backed group Hezbollah. Lebanese state media said one person was killed in an Israeli strike in a residential area in the northern part of the country. The Lebanese health ministry says at least 850 people have died since the Israel-Hezbollah conflict resumed earlier this month. And the multiple waves of Israeli attacks across Lebanon have also driven hundreds of thousands to flee. CNN's Isabel Young reports from Beirut's southern suburbs, a Hezbollah stronghold battered heavily by Israel.
So we're in the southern suburbs in the area of Dahya, and it's just another level of destruction here. You can see this building was just recently struck by an Israeli airstrike, still on smoke. This whole building's just entirely crumpled, stuff everywhere on the floor. I mean, the Israeli Defense Forces said that this is a Hezbollah stronghold, and there are Hezbollah command centers here that they've been targeting. They've ordered everyone to evacuate, and saying that they'll treat anyone who remains here as terrorists.
This is the strike that leveled the building behind me. Dahya has been hit harder than any other Beirut neighborhood. But still, a small trickle of residents return to pick up belongings or check on their homes.
What did you come to pick up? What does it feel like seeing your neighborhood like this?
نحن بدنا نصمد بالنهاية نحن بدنا نصمد لأنه المقاومين عم بقدموا كثير دم ونحن شو ما قدمنا قليل.
Hezbollah is the reason that the Israelis are targeting this area. You have no blame for them.
إسرائيل هي السبب 15 شهر هي عم تقتلنا إسرائيل ونحن ساكتين.
هيك شكل المجمع بعد الضرب.
In the aftermath of strikes, it falls on the civil defense team based on the outskirts